The text message glowed on my phone screen at exactly 10:47 p.m., sending a jolt of anxiety through my exhausted body. "Single dad, come to my room, but don't knock." I stared at those words from Victoria Blackwood, my intimidating CEO, wondering if this was some kind of test or trap. Standing in that hotel hallway, I had no idea that walking through her door would reveal a secret that would change not just my career, but my entire understanding of the woman I'd feared for years, and ultimately save my daughter's future. If you've ever had to choose between your professional dignity and your child's well-being, this story might just give you the courage to take that terrifying step into the unknown. Like and subscribe if you believe that sometimes the most difficult moments in our lives can lead to unexpected blessings that we never saw coming. My name is Ethan Mercer, and 6 months ago, I was just another overworked marketing director at Blackwood Enterprises, a mid-sized publishing company that specialized in educational materials. I had been with the company for 8 years, slowly climbing the corporate ladder despite the notorious difficulty of working under Victoria Blackwood, a woman known throughout the industry for her brilliant business mind and equally formidable temper. Victoria had inherited the company from her father 15 years ago and transformed it from a traditional textbook publisher into a digital education powerhouse. She was exacting, unyielding, and seemingly devoid of empathy, the kind of boss who expected perfection and had little patience for excuses, no matter how valid. In executive meetings, I'd seen grown men nearly in tears after her scathing critiques of their presentations. Despite her difficult personality, I had managed to stay in her good graces through sheer competence and a willingness to work punishing hours. That changed 3 years ago when my wife, Rebecca, was diagnosed with aggressive ovarian cancer. The next 18 months were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and desperate hope followed by crushing disappointment as treatment after treatment failed. Through it all, our daughter Zoe, who was only 4 when Rebecca was diagnosed, watched her mother fade away with the confused sadness of a child who understands something terrible is happening but can't grasp the permanence of what's coming. Victoria had been surprisingly accommodating during Rebecca's illness, allowing me flexible hours and remote work when necessary. But after Rebecca passed away, her patience quickly evaporated. She expected me to return to my previous work schedule after a brief bereavement leave, seemingly unable to comprehend that being a suddenly single father to a grieving kindergartner made that impossible. "I understand you're going through a difficult time, Ethan," she said during one particularly tense meeting, her voice clinically detached. "But Blackwood Enterprises can't carry underperforming executives, regardless of their personal circumstances." I had nodded, swallowing my anger and grief. I needed this job, not just for the income, but for the health insurance that covered Zoe's therapy sessions and the medication that helped her sleep through the night without nightmares. So I adapted. I hired a nanny I could barely afford. I worked late into the night after Zoe went to bed. I took calls during my daughter's soccer practices, typing emails on my phone while trying to simultaneously cheer when she looked my way. I became a master of multitasking and functioning on minimal sleep. For a while, it seemed to be working. My performance reviews improved, and Victoria's criticism became less frequent. But the cost was steep. I was missing precious moments of Zoe's childhood, and the guilt of that weighed on me almost as heavily as my grief. Then came the annual company retreat, 3 days at an upscale resort in the mountains, mandatory for all department heads. The timing couldn't have been worse. Zoe's 7th birthday fell on the second day of the retreat, and I had promised her a special celebration, just the 2 of us. It would be her 2nd birthday without her mother, and I knew how important it was to make it special. I approached Victoria's office with a carefully rehearsed explanation, hoping she might make an exception just this once. "Absolutely not," she said before I had even finished speaking. "The Pearson contract presentation is scheduled for that day, and as marketing director, you need to be there." "I understand the importance of the Pearson contract," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But my daughter..." "We'll have many more birthdays," Victoria interrupted, her blue eyes cold. "This contract, if we lose it, could mean restructuring the entire marketing department. Do you understand what I'm saying, Ethan?" The threat was clear. If I chose my daughter's birthday over the retreat, I might not have a job to come back to. And without my job, how would I provide for Zoe at all? So I found myself checking into the Mountain View Resort on a Thursday afternoon, having left Zoe with my sister after a tearful goodbye and a promise to video call during her small family birthday dinner the next day. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest as I unpacked my suitcase in the tastefully appointed room, placing my laptop and the presentation materials on the desk by the window. The first day of the retreat consisted of team-building exercises that felt more like torture than bonding, followed by a formal dinner where Victoria outlined her ambitious goals for the coming year. I sat at a table with other department heads, picking at my overpriced steak and nodding at appropriate intervals while my thoughts remained with Zoe. After dinner, several colleagues headed to the hotel bar, but I excused myself and returned to my room. I had promised to call Zoe before her bedtime, and I wanted privacy for that conversation. Her small face appeared on my phone screen, her dark curls, so like her mother's, framing features that still showed traces of baby roundness. Daddy. Aunt Melissa let me have ice cream after dinner even though it's not my birthday yet. I smiled, pushing down the ache of missing her. That sounds like Aunt Melissa. Did you save room for birthday cake tomorrow? Uh-huh. We got chocolate with strawberries on top. I wish you could have some. Me too, sweetheart. But we'll have our special daddy-daughter day when I get back, remember? Anything you want to do. Her smile dimmed slightly. But it won't be on my actual birthday. I know, Zozo. I'm sorry. Sometimes grown-ups have to do things they don't want to do for work. Like when Mommy had to grade papers on the weekend? The innocent comparison to Rebecca's occasional weekend work as a high school English teacher made my throat tighten. Something like that. But I promise I'll call you tomorrow right after your school party, and again before your dinner with Aunt Melissa and Uncle Dave. After extracting a promise that she would go to bed without argument, I ended the call and sat in the silent hotel room, feeling more alone than I had in months. I pulled out my laptop, determined to review my presentation for the Pearson contract one more time. Victoria would accept nothing less than perfection, and I couldn't afford to give her any reason to doubt my commitment. I must have fallen asleep at the desk, because the next thing I knew, my phone was buzzing with an incoming call. Disoriented, I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. It was 7:15 a.m., and Victoria Blackwood's name flashed on the display. Ethan, she said without preamble when I answered. The Pearson representatives arrived early. They want to move the presentation to this morning instead of this afternoon. Be in the Aspen conference room in 45 minutes. My stomach dropped. This morning? But I was planning to call my daughter during her school birthday party at lunch. 45 minutes, Ethan. And bring the revised projections we discussed last week. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a moment, trying to process this change in plans. If the presentation was this morning, and the executive strategy session was scheduled for the afternoon, I would miss both opportunities to call Zoe on her birthday. I showered and dressed in record time, my mind racing as I tried to figure out a solution. I could try to step out during the afternoon session, but Victoria would notice, she always did. I could call Zoe's school and ask them to let her use the phone during class, but that would disrupt her day and probably embarrass her. In the end, I sent a text to my sister explaining the situation and asking her to tell Zoe that I would call as soon as I possibly could, even if it was after her bedtime. It was a poor substitute for hearing her excitement about her special day, but it was the best I could do. The presentation went well, better than expected, actually. The Pearson representatives seemed impressed with our digital platform and the customization options I outlined. Victoria, standing at the back of the room, gave me a single nod when I finished, high praise from her. As we broke for lunch, I hoped to find a quiet corner to at least send Zoe a video message, but Victoria had other plans. Ethan, join us for lunch, she said, gesturing to the Pearson executives. They have some questions about implementation timelines. It wasn't a request. I followed the group to the hotel restaurant, answering questions and making notes about potential concerns, all while watching the clock tick closer to the time of Zoe's school party. By the time lunch ended, it was too late. I sent a quick text to my sister, "Missed the party. Tell Zoe I love her and will call before dinner." The afternoon strategy session dragged on interminably. Victoria was in rare form, challenging every department head's projections and demanding more aggressive growth targets. When my turn came, I presented my marketing plan with as much enthusiasm as I could muster, but my heart wasn't in it. All I could think about was Zoe, opening presents at my sister's house, looking for my call. At 5:30 p.m., Victoria finally called an end to the session. "We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. I expect revised targets from each of you based on today's discussion." As everyone gathered their materials, I approached Victoria. "I need to make a personal call before dinner," I said, trying to keep my tone professional. "It's my daughter's birthday." Victoria glanced up from her tablet, her expression unreadable. "The executive dinner starts at 7. Don't be late." I took that as permission and hurried back to my room, calling my sister's number as soon as the door closed behind me. When she answered, I could hear children's voices in the background. "Ethan, thank God. Zoe's been asking for you all afternoon." "I'm so sorry, Melissa. The schedule changed, and I couldn't get away. Can I talk to her now?" There was a pause. "She's in the middle of opening presents with her cousins. Let me see if I can pull her away." A moment later, Zoe's voice came through the speaker. "Daddy? Happy birthday, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I couldn't call earlier. Are you having a good day?" "It's okay," she said, but I could hear the disappointment in her voice. "Aunt Melissa got me the art set I wanted. And Uncle Dave is making funny hats for everyone. That sounds wonderful. I wish I could be there." "Me too." There was a pause, then, "Daddy, when is Mommy's birthday again?" The question caught me off guard. "November 12th, remember? We always made her breakfast in bed." "I know. I was thinking about her today. Do you think she can see my birthday party from heaven?" I closed my eyes, fighting back sudden tears. "I'm absolutely certain she can, Zozo. And I bet she thinks you're getting so big and beautiful. Aunt Melissa said I look like her." "You do. You have her curls and her smile. And her kind heart." There was commotion in the background, and Melissa's voice called something I couldn't make out. "I have to go, Daddy. We're going to have cake now." "Okay, sweetheart. Have a wonderful birthday. I love you more than anything in the world." "Love you too. Bye." The call ended, and I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, feeling hollow. I had missed my daughter's birthday for a corporate retreat that probably could have been conducted via video conference. What kind of father was I becoming? I arrived at the executive dinner precisely at 7, taking my assigned seat at a table with the CFO and several regional directors. Victoria sat at the head table with the Pearson executives, occasionally scanning the room with her sharp gaze. The dinner was elaborate and pretentious, 5 courses paired with expensive wines that I barely tasted. I made appropriate small talk, laughed at the right moments, and contributed to discussions about market trends and competitive strategies. But inside, I was seething with resentment, at Victoria, at the company, but mostly at myself for allowing my priorities to become so distorted. By the time dessert was served, I had made a decision. I would update my resume this weekend. Blackwood Enterprises wasn't the only publishing company in the city. My experience and track record would be valuable elsewhere, perhaps somewhere with a more family-friendly culture. As the dinner wound down, Victoria stood and tapped her glass for attention. "I want to thank everyone for their contributions today. We've made excellent progress, and I'm confident that tomorrow will be equally productive. For now, enjoy the rest of your evening." Breakfast begins at 7, and will reconvene at 9. People began to disperse, some heading to the bar for nightcaps, others returning to their rooms. I was about to leave when I felt a hand on my arm. "A word, Ethan," Victoria said, her voice low. I followed her to a quiet corner of the dining room, bracing myself for criticism about some aspect of my performance that hadn't met her standards. "The Pearson presentation was excellent," she said, surprising me. "They were particularly impressed with the customization options you outlined." "Thank you," I replied, uncertain where this was going. "However, you seemed distracted during the afternoon session." Her blue eyes studied me with uncomfortable intensity. "Your marketing targets were conservative compared to your usual projections." I considered offering an excuse, then decided on honesty. "Today is my daughter's 7th birthday. It's her 2nd birthday without her mother. I had promised to call her during her school party, but the schedule change made that impossible. I expected dismissal, perhaps a reminder about separating personal and professional matters. Instead, Victoria was silent for a long moment. "I see," she finally said. "That's unfortunate timing." "Yes, it is." She glanced at her watch. "It's only 9:30. Isn't that early for a 7-year-old's bedtime?" "Usually, yes, but she had an exciting day with her cousins. She's probably exhausted." Victoria nodded, then surprised me again. "You should try calling her anyway. Children remember these things." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving me staring after her in confusion. Had Victoria Blackwood, notorious for her lack of empathy, just expressed concern about my daughter's feelings? I returned to my room and called my sister again. As Victoria had suggested, Zoe was still awake, though in her pajamas and ready for bed. We talked for nearly 20 minutes, with her excitedly describing every present and game from her party. When we finally said goodnight, I felt marginally better about the day. I spent the next 2 hours working on the revised marketing targets Victoria had requested, determined to prove that my personal situation wasn't affecting my professional performance. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight, and my eyes were burning with fatigue. I was about to turn off my laptop when a text message appeared on my phone. From Victoria Blackwood. "Single dad, come to my room, but don't knock." I stared at the message, reading it multiple times to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting. The wording was strange and oddly specific. Why would she call me single dad instead of my name? And why shouldn't I knock? My first thought was that this was inappropriate, a line I had no intention of crossing, regardless of my job security. But Victoria had never shown the slightest personal interest in me or any other employee. She was famously private about her personal life, to the point that office rumors about her were wildly contradictory. Some claimed she was secretly married to a European businessman. Others insisted she was a workaholic who had no time for relationships. My second thought was that this might be some kind of test. Perhaps she wanted to see if I would behave unprofessionally, giving her grounds for dismissal. But that seemed unnecessarily elaborate, even for Victoria. Curiosity finally won out over caution. I pulled on a sweater over my t-shirt, checked that I was otherwise presentably dressed in jeans, and headed to the elevator. Victoria was staying on the top floor in one of the resort's luxury suites, a fact I knew only because her assistant had mentioned it when distributing room keys at check-in. Standing outside her door, room 1214, I hesitated. This could be a career-ending mistake. But the specificity of her instruction, "Don't knock," suggested there was more to this than a simple meeting. I sent a quick text, "I'm outside your room." The response came immediately, "The door is unlocked. Enter quietly." Taking a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed the door open slowly. The suite was dimly lit, with only a single lamp illuminating the spacious living. As we returned to our work, I reflected on how a moment of crisis had created an unexpected connection between two single parents trying their best in a world that rarely accommodates the messy reality of balancing work and family. That text message, strange, mysterious, and slightly alarming, had been the catalyst for transformation, not just for Victoria and me, but for an entire company culture. 6 months later, Blackwood Enterprises was featured in a business magazine as a model for family-friendly workplace policies. The article highlighted our flexible scheduling, on-site childcare options, and comprehensive parental leave program, all innovations that had stemmed from Victoria's personal experience as a single mother trying to lead a company while raising a child alone. The morning the article was published, I found Victoria standing by the window in her office, gazing out at the city skyline with the magazine open on her desk. "Congratulations," I said. "The board must be pleased with the positive press." She turned, a complex emotion playing across her features. "My father would have hated every word of this article," she said, tapping the glossy page. "He believed business and family should remain entirely separate spheres. Never let them see your personal life, Victoria," he used to say. "They'll use it against you." And yet here you are, being celebrated for doing exactly the opposite. She smiled slightly. "Here we are," she corrected. "This wouldn't have happened without that night at the hotel." It was true. In the year since that retreat, Victoria and I had developed a partnership that transcended the typical boss-employee relationship. We weren't exactly friends. Victoria still maintained certain professional boundaries, but we shared a mutual respect and understanding born of our parallel journeys as single parents. That understanding had extended to our children as well. Zoe and Oliver had formed an unlikely friendship, with my daughter taking on a protective big sister role that delighted them both. We had established a routine of monthly dinners at each other's homes, allowing the children to play while Victoria and I discussed both work and the challenges of single parenthood. During one such dinner at my house, after the children had gone to the backyard to play on the swing set, Victoria surprised me with an unexpected question. "Do you think Rebecca would approve of how you're raising Zoe?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I considered the question seriously, appreciating that she had remembered my late wife's name. "I think she would. Not everything I do is what she would have done, but I believe she'd understand I'm doing my best." I paused, then added, "What about Oliver's father? Does he know what an amazing child he's missing out on?" Victoria's expression hardened slightly. "He receives updates and photos as required by our custody agreement. Whether he appreciates what he's missing is another question entirely." I had learned over the past year that Victoria's ex-husband was a successful surgeon who had decided fatherhood was incompatible with his career ambitions. Their divorce had been finalized when Oliver was just an infant, and his involvement since then had been minimal at best. "His loss," I said simply. Her expression softened. "Yes, it is. Though sometimes I wonder if Oliver is missing something essential by not having a father figure in his daily life." Through the window, we could see Zoe pushing Oliver on the swing, both of them laughing. "Children are remarkably resilient," I said. "And they find what they need in unexpected places. Zoe has her Uncle Dave and her grandfather. Oliver has you, and that's more than enough." Victoria nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. "I suppose we're both doing the best we can with an imperfect situation. That's all any parent can do," I agreed. "Single or otherwise." As the evening wound down and Victoria prepared to take a sleepy Oliver home, Zoe tugged on her sleeve. "Ms. Blackwood, can Oliver come to my school play next week? I'm playing the lead tree." Victoria glanced at me, then back at Zoe's hopeful face. "If your dad doesn't mind driving Oliver home afterward. I have an investor meeting that evening that I can't reschedule." "I'd be happy to," I said. "In fact, why doesn't Oliver just spend the night? We could make it a pizza and movie night after the play." Oliver's face lit up. "Can I, Mom? Please?" Something flickered across Victoria's face, hesitation, perhaps, or an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Then she nodded. "If you're sure it's not an imposition, Ethan." "Not at all. Zoe's been asking for a sleepover for weeks. After they left, Zoe helped me clear the dinner dishes, chattering excitedly about having Oliver stay over. He's never had a sleepover before, she informed me. His mom doesn't let him stay at other kids' houses. I wasn't surprised. Victoria's protective instincts toward Oliver were strong, which made her willingness to allow this sleepover all the more significant. The night of the school play, I sat in the elementary school auditorium with Oliver beside me, his small face serious as he watched the stage where Zoe, dressed as an impressively realistic oak tree, delivered her lines with enthusiasm if not perfect recall. When she took her bow, Oliver clapped louder than anyone, his pride in his older friend evident. Later, as the children ate pizza and watched a movie in the living room, I received a text from Victoria. "How did Zoe do?" I smiled and replied, "She was the most convincing tree I've ever seen. Oliver recorded it on my phone for you." There was a pause, then, "Thank you for doing this. For him, and for me." It was the most direct acknowledgement she had ever made of our evolving relationship, this strange, unexpected connection that had begun with a desperate text message in a hotel. "That's what friends do," I texted back. Another pause, longer this time. Finally, "Yes, I suppose it is." The following Monday, Victoria called me into her office. I assumed it was to discuss Oliver's sleepover or perhaps some work matter that had arisen over the weekend. Instead, she slid a folder across her desk. "What's this?" I asked, opening it to find details of a new position, Chief Innovation Officer, reporting directly to the CEO. "Your new job, if you want it," Victoria said. "You've been instrumental in reshaping our company culture and modernizing our approach to work-life integration. This role would formalize that contribution and expand it across all departments." I stared at the job description, noting the significant salary increase and the explicit mention of flexible working arrangements. "Victoria, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she replied simply. "You've earned it, Ethan. And selfishly, I'd like to have someone in the C-suite who understands both sides of my life." I thought about how far we'd both come since that night at the hotel, Victoria from a CEO hiding her motherhood to one who had made it a cornerstone of her leadership philosophy, me from a struggling single dad to someone who had found a way to thrive both professionally and personally. "Yes," I said. "On one condition." Her eyebrow arched in that familiar way. "You and your conditions. What is it this time?" "The children's room needs a proper art station. Zoe and Oliver have been complaining." Victoria laughed, a full, genuine laugh that still surprised me whenever I heard it. "Done. Anything else?" I shook my head, smiling. "Just thank you. For trusting me that night, and every day since. You're the one who showed up when I texted, 'Single dad, come to my room, but don't knock,'" she pointed out. That took either tremendous courage or questionable judgment. Maybe a bit of both, I admitted. But it turned out to be the best decision I've made in a long time. As I left her office with my new job description in hand, I thought about how life's most profound changes often begin with moments of vulnerability, a desperate text message, a sleeping child on a hotel sofa, a single parent reaching out to another in a moment of need. 3 years after my wife's death, I had found not just a rewarding career path but also a community of support that included my boss, of all people. Zoe was thriving, with both the stability she needed and the understanding that work and family didn't have to be opposing forces in her father's life. And somewhere along the way, Victoria Blackwood had transformed from the fearsome CEO I once dreaded disappointing into a fellow traveler on the complicated journey of single parenthood, someone who understood both my professional ambitions and the fierce love that made those ambitions meaningful. That night, as I helped Zoe with her homework at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Oliver has informed me that trees need their best friends for support. Apparently this is critical botanical knowledge from Zoe. Sleepover at our house this weekend?" I smiled and showed the message to Zoe, who bounced excitedly in her chair. "Can we, Daddy? Please?" "Of course," I replied, both to my daughter and in my answering text. Some invitations, you simply don't refuse, especially when they come from someone who has changed your life with a single message. If you're watching this and struggling to balance work and family, or feeling alone in your journey as a single parent, remember that connection and understanding can come from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes, the text message that seems strangest, "Single dad, come to my room, but don't knock," can be the beginning of a transformation you never saw coming. Like and subscribe if you believe in second chances, unexpected friendships, and the power of vulnerability to change not just individual lives, but entire cultures. Because sometimes, the most important door we walk through isn't the one we planned on, but the one that opens when we're brave enough to answer an unusual call.